It's the TCTV Training Show. The TCTV Training Show. We'll teach you how to shoot. We'll teach you how to light. Teach you how to mic and edit right. Each second Saturday there's a free training, from programs on display to focusing and framing. It's the TCTV Training Show. The TCTV Training Show. You're watching TCTV. It's the Training Show. The TCTV Training Show. Second Saturdays at 12 o'clock in Studio A.
Hello, my name is Dan Bennett, and welcome to the Second Saturday Training Show. Today's episode is all about studio lighting. Essentially, we're going to tell you about studio lighting and everything you ever wanted to know about lighting, but were afraid to ask. Because I know you're all afraid to ask about studio lighting. Okay, so studio lighting is really about controlling your light sources, the direction of the light, the amount of light, and the color of the light. When you're outside and you're doing some kind of a field shoot outside, essentially you've got the sun, you've got clouds, it might be rainy, you've got noise, all kinds of elements that you can't really control. But in a studio, it never rains, there might be an earthquake, but there's no wind. You can control the amount of sound and you can control the light. So we have a lot of members that do studio shoots, and as you can see above, there's a grid and there's all kinds of lights. And you can disconnect them and move them around and replug them in and control a great deal of where the light is coming from and its intensity. So the primary light that we use here in the studio is called a Fresnel. Now it's spelled Fresnel because the person that invented it was French, and they like their silent S's. And so I brought one down off the grid to give you a look-see. And the Fresnel is the lens and not necessarily the housing that the light is on. And this is a very, very special lens. Fresnel lenses are used in cars. They're not quite shaped the same way, but the idea is that you direct the light from the light source, the lamp, and you have it pointed and focused in a straight direction. And so depending on the shape of part of the lens determines which way the light is bent. And you can see in this diagram right here that you have your light source and you have this interesting tooth-like corrugated pattern on the other side, and light bends depending on the angle of the inclusion or occlusion on the glass, and so it'll hit it this way and go that way. And that will change depending on the distance of the lamp to the light source. But this is the mainstay of our lights, and I'm going to get up and give you a little bit of a demonstration. So these lights are hooked to the grid, and the idea is that we want to take a Fresnel lens and turn it this way, tilt it up and down, have it swivel around, and so there's a control mechanism here and one here that help you point it into place and then have it set there and stay where you want it. All the Fresnels get a great big safety chain. These things weigh about 20 pounds or so, and so we want to make sure that they're on there nice and solid and safe and don't hurt anyone or break anything. Now you'll notice these here are called barn doors. There's a couple other names that people can use for them, but they're barn doors. And their primary purpose is to control where the light is going to and coming from. Essentially, if you have lights pointing at an object, you have two different lights pointing that might make a bright zone that you don't want. You don't want it too bright over here, not bright enough there. And so what these shutters, as they're also called, what these will do is you can move these in and around, you can move this up and down, and you can have a great deal of control over where the light is going. So these come off, the barn doors come off, and they're relatively simple. And I'll take this off and set this right here. And you'll see a little mechanism, or not a mechanism, you'll see a little holder. This is called a gel holder, and it holds two different things. It holds diffusion, and I'll talk about diffusion a little bit later in the program, or it holds colored gels. And I'll probably pass these around so you can look at them. We've got all kinds of different colors. But these are pretty important because the regular light coming out is very bright and intense, and I'll give a demonstration a little bit later. And so you have a little holder here so that you can soften the light or add some color to it of some kind. Now here you see the Fresnel lens, and you can see it looks like a series of concentric rings. Lighthouses use Fresnel lenses. Headlights have Fresnel lenses in them. Spotlights have Fresnel lenses. And we're used to a regular lens being rounded. But these are flat and they're just corrugated. So essentially, we have this lens, and it is used by this little lamp in the back. This is a halogen lamp, and it has a certain brightness and a certain color tone, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But essentially, what makes this Fresnel lamp so useful is that we have a little slider in the back, and you can see a little word that says F and S. F is for flood. You can make this a floodlight, or S, you can have it as a spotlight, and it all depends on where the lens is in relationship to the Fresnel lens, or where the light is, where the lamp is. Yeah. So essentially, this little slider, when I slide it all the way to flood, the lamp comes very forward. And so the light hits the lamp, or the lamp hits the lens, and it spreads out. And the light is less intense, and it's over a wider area. And you would take the barn doors and close them in so you're getting less intense light, but you're not spreading the light into areas that you don't want. And if I take the slider and slide it all the way back, you'll see that the lamp is in the back. And because it's a little bit farther, you can shape and focus the light passing through the lens to a little spot, depending on how far away it is. So we have, I think, close to 20 of these in the grid. And what I've done is I've taken 4 of them over here and 4 of them over there, and I will do a demonstration on the different kinds of lighting that are used in the studio and the effect that they have. And you'll notice some dramatic, interesting differences. So this is our lens, is our lamp, our Fresnel lamp, and it's a mainstay. When you go to the theater, tons of these, tons and tons of these. And they can get up in the back and they can make it a spot or a flood or add color to it. And they're industry standard and have been for many, many years. Okay, so shaping the light is very important. And let's go to the next slide. Okay, color and temperature. This is where I'll lightly touch on physics. As you can see in the diagram here, you've got everything from red to blue. And essentially, red light has a longer wavelength, and it has a warmer tone, as they say. The bluer light has a shorter spectrum and has a cooler tone. I'm an artist, and when I paint paintings and I am choosing my colors, when I paint a painting and there's yellows and pinks and oranges and reds, there's a feeling of warmth you get when you look at the painting. When I use greens and blues and grays, then it has a sense of coolness. In the same way, these lights have a sense of coolness or warmness. And the redder it is, the warmer it is, and the bluer it is, the cooler it is. Now, in terms of lighting, as far as the studio goes, all of the lights, the Fresnels, and you'll notice there are other kinds of lights up on the grid. You'll see big round ones up there. Those are called scoops, and there are a couple of licos or ellipsoids. And those are special lamps because you can, it's got a series of regular lenses that you can adjust. And I think, hey Ray, I think they're H something. And they should be on. I think they got our TCTV logo in there somewhere. Yeah, H2 and 3 or H1 and 2, something like that. Nope. Yep. There we go. And the other one too. There's another one and it should, there we go. There's our logos. So the ellipsoids are really interesting because you can stick a little metal, it's either called a gobo or a cookie, and you stick it in front and then you adjust the focus and you can put all kinds of different shapes and light them up. But the Fresnel is what we use the most, and that's what is shining on me here. So color temperature is pretty important when you're filming. Sunlight, when you're outside, the color temperature is about 6,000 degrees. And the reason we say that is it has to do with a model. It's called black body radiation. Essentially, it's a hypothetical sphere that glows the hotter it gets. So when it's 1,000 degrees, it glows very red. And when it's 3,000 degrees, it glows pink or orange or orangey yellow. And when it's 4,000 degrees, it's yellow. And when it's 6,000 degrees, it's white. And 7,000 degrees, and it just goes up the spectrum the hotter it gets. You know, if you think you stick a poker in the fire, the less red and more towards white that it gets, the hotter it is. And that's essentially the way it works. Now these Fresnels, all the lights in here, the ellipsoids, the other lights we have here are at 3,300 degrees, 3,300 degrees. The idea is that it's yellowish, but it's a warm color. Essentially, when we film in the studio, we want everyone to look healthy. Whether you got a cold or the flu, it doesn't matter. We want everyone to look healthy. And if we used bluer lights, everyone would look seasick. Melanin is the pigment in our skin, and 3,300 degrees makes it look very, very happy. So that's the color temperature. But you may not want that particular color temperature, even though it's pretty standard. So you can add different gels for effects or not. But essentially, that's the color temperature. Fluorescent lights have a much higher color temperature. They're closer to 6,000 or 7,000 degrees. And so they're, like the diagram, they're closer to the cloudy day. They're in the kind of bluer part of the spectrum. And blue sky is up closer to 10,000 degrees. So even though the higher temperature is a little bit more like natural, it doesn't necessarily make us look as good. So we like this particular color temperature. I think that's it. Unless there are questions. We have mics here in the audience. You got to turn them on and if anyone has any questions. But that's essentially color temperature, and it matters a lot. When we balance the cameras, aside from being physically balanced, this sheet of paper is white. Now, if the color balance of a camera is not the same as the other camera, it would look pinkish when we are looking at it in one camera, or it would look greenish or bluish or yellowish in the other camera. So we have to make sure that the cameras are recording this particular color as this particular color. And there's a thing that we do in the studio, it's called white balancing. And essentially, white is all the colors mixed together, so to speak, and it's the kind of central position that we try and make all the other colors match to. See, if the lights were red or orange or pink, candlelight, this wouldn't look white anymore, it would look orange. Or if the fluorescents were on, this wouldn't look white anymore, it would look kind of blue or green. So we will zoom in when we do color balancing. We'll zoom in on this, and we tell the camera that's the central color that we're using, and the camera will say, okay. And then all the cameras will see red is the same color, or green is the same color, or brown or blue or purple or whatever. So color balancing is extremely important in the studio, because you want everything to look the same in all the cameras and from all the lights. Okay, where am I? Okay. The next most important thing about studio lighting is its position, where it's placed, and in relationship to where the subject is. I'm the subject right now, but a lot of talk shows have a host and one or more guests. And so you got to make sure that your light is placed in the right spot. For instance, right now I have a light over here and a light over here. And one of them is called the key, and that is the stronger and brighter light. And it pretends to be like sunlight. When we're outside and running around or doing whatever we're doing, we have a central light source, that big bright thing in the sky that moves around over the course of the day, and it provides the most light. And then there are clouds and sky, and they also produce light, and they fill in the shadows. So the key light is the main light, that's the brightest portion, and then your fill light is at 45, in this case it's probably closer to 60 degrees, and you'll see why I have them farther apart than usual. Usually they're a little bit closer together. Anyway, you want to fill in the shadows. If our light person turned off this one over here, that would be A something. There we go. So when you look at me in the camera, I'm very bright over here, and I'm very dark over here. And so we've got this stark thing. Now, if you're wanting to film something that's avant-garde or edgy, or making it look really interesting, then you would have your lights in different places. But for the most part, you want people to be seen. So you've got your key light and your backlight, and if you want to go ahead and turn that back on, Ray, that would be great. That is Ray, right?
Hello.
Okay, thank you, Ray. The other important thing is that you have a backlight, a headlight. Essentially, when the camera is looking at me, I'm lit along here to here. Everything in front is lit. But it doesn't necessarily light the back or the top of my head, and it doesn't necessarily light up the edges of my shoulders and torso. So if we turn off that light, yeah, there you go. When you look at me, I look flatter, right? Because all that's being lit is just this front part, and my shoulders look flatter, and my head looks flatter, and I'm a little more two-dimensional than three-dimensional. And if Ray could so kindly turn that back on. Now you see there's light coming from most of the directions, and I actually look three-dimensional again. And I'm feeling very three-dimensional. So these three lights are essential and key to doing studio productions. Without them, you're going to get something different. Your subjects are not going to be very well lit, or they'll look a little bit too dark for one reason or another, and that's just no good. Usually when we teach the studio class, this is the standard that we teach them, and once they get to know it and use it, that's what we recommend. After a little while, they want to do something avant-garde or edgy. Then they can mix up the lights and add colors and that sort of thing. Now, on the bottom here, we've got 5-point lighting. Essentially, every single subject, if you have like 3 people and they're all sitting around, every single subject needs a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. So you end up using more than 3 lights. The key light would be shining over here, and that would be my main light, but this person is facing this way. So that light is coming at them in front, and they need this light to light up this side, and they might need a light over here to light up the other side to make sure that they're evenly lit. And they might need their own backlight as well. And so what will happen in the studio when there's a lot of, when there's a host and a number of guests, we'll have 2 or 3 backlights lighting up their head and shoulders, and then we'll have 2 or 3 keys and 2 or 3 fills. And it just depends on how many guests and the angle of the lights and that sort of thing. And a lot of times there's a backdrop, and we'll want to light that up too. And so some productions will use 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 lights all at the same time to make sure they're covering all the subjects. So 3-point lighting, 5-point lighting, standard has been for many years. Dryer sheets, you say? Well, this is called diffusion. And when teaching the class, people have talked about this being a dryer sheet. And what's interesting is that it may be the same kind of material because these sit right in front of the lights, and these lights get very, very hot, extremely hot. And the dryer gets up to 150, 160, 200 degrees inside. It can get very, very hot. And your dryer sheet doesn't melt or burn, and it stays relatively intact. And so this spun material may be very, very similar to dryer sheet material. But what it does, it doesn't necessarily make the Fresnel smell any better. But what it does do is it diffuses the light. Essentially, the light is all going more or less in one direction. And what the diffusion does is it makes it bounce around, and it softens it softens the light. Essentially, with a flashlight, you've got this light coming at you, and you'll get a fairly sharp shadow. But if you had diffusion in front of it, it would be a softer shadow. And I'm going to pass these around, and you guys can take a look at them. And just take a look at them and pass them around. What I would like to do is give you a little bit of a demonstration. Talk about the gels. The gels are really interesting. They come in great big sheets, and we cut them to fit the gel holder right here. And they come in every color of the rainbow. They come really dark or not really, intensity or what's the word, saturation. The color saturation, there's all different kinds. There's all different kinds of colors going all across the spectrum. And sometimes we have bands that play. Every first Friday there is a show called Bandoli Band, and a band plays, and a whole lot of these lights get colored gels in them so that the band gets all kinds of different colors, and it makes it look more pretty and more fun and that sort of thing. But you could potentially put the same colored gel in all the lights, and then you would appear to be warmer or colder. You know, if you're doing a winter show, this show is all about snow, you'd probably want to put blue gels in your Fresnels. And that kind of rhymed, didn't it? And it would look really cold, and you'd sit there and do this while you're talking in the show, and people was like, oh, it must be cold in there. So why don't we do a little demonstration for you. So right now, all of these lights are they're the regular Fresnels, and they have diffusion in them. And you can see when I put my hand over this, you can see the shadow, you can see the two different lights there, but the shadow is relatively soft. And so we call this soft light, or I'm calling it soft light. If Ray, you could turn off the soft lights and turn on the hard lights, you'll notice something really interesting. And that, yeah, there you go, perfect. Now, you'll notice these are exactly the same lights. I have them at the same distance, the same lamp distance from the lens, but there's no diffusion in them. And you'll see that I'm much, much brighter. It's a much stronger source of light. And you'll see that the shadow is much more intense, and it's much more defined. So when people do productions here in the studio, they don't usually go without the diffusion. Almost all of them have diffusion. Occasionally, you'll have a group of people and you want a really strong key light. And so one of the Fresnels that's back further will have the diffusion out, so it casts a stronger light and it's sharper, and then there'll be a couple of fill lights to fill in any shadow gaps and stuff. But this kind of light can be really useful if you're having a show where you're showing off jewels or porcelain or something that's really shiny or see-through and you want it to glitter. Definitely don't use diffusion. You want that to show off. And whenever you see commercials and stuff and they're rotating the, the Home Shopping Network, they're always showing off bright and shiny objects. Well, they've got this kind of light. There's no diffusion in there. They want it to glitter as much as possible. Now, you'll notice that my forehead is really shiny. I try and buff it every day, but, well, what are you going to do? So one of the problems with the harder light is that you will get shiny spots. And so generally, diffusion is really the way to go, but there are some uses for it from time to time. So we've got soft light and hard light, and now we want warm light, and that would be set number 3. There we go. And there's that one over there. I think it's an F. Yeah, that's F something. And if you could turn off I think it's A3. Yeah, you want F something? Yeah, the soft lights. There you go. And if you could turn off I think it's A3. There you go. There we go. Okay, so this is soft lighting. And from time to time, it's used in the studio. A lot of times, they're used when there is a performance of some kind. Dancers or someone is singing or something like that, and you want it to look very warm. The curtain behind me is a neutral gray. It's called NBC gray. Somewhere along the way, NBC patented this particular gray for curtains. And it is neutral. It's a neutral gray. It's not blue or bluish or greenish or pinkish or yellow. It's absolutely neutral gray. And that way, you can take your color gels and whatever the color in the gel gets cast on it, that's the color that appears. This particular TCTV sign has a teal in it, and the other one has an orange in it. And if the curtain was not a neutral gray, that orange might appear reddish or yellowish, and this might appear greenish or more blue. So neutral gray is really important. But you'll notice that I look much, much warmer. I almost feel warmer. In fact, it's a good thing I'm not wearing a coat because I would be too warm. Well, anyway, this is warm lighting. Okay, now on to cool light. Oh, you're good. That was really good. Now, you'll notice how cold it is in here now. I'm getting cold. I need my coat because I'm freezing. But what I did is I stuck some gels that were mildly blue. They weren't really saturated with color. And so they're a lighter color. And you can see just how blue I look. Now, you might think that I'm seasick or something like that. This is not a natural tone. It's really, really blue. And it might be useful for some productions, but generally we recommend that people don't put colored gels like this in their show unless they're doing it for a specific purpose, because it's cool lighting. So Ray, if you want to go back to the normal lighting, the top number one set. Oh, one other thing, yeah, that'd be great. One other thing, actually, Ray, if you want to turn on set 3 and 4, we'll have a combination, like right here, we have a combination of cool lighting and warm lighting at the same time. And I think in this case, it's the two F1s. Yeah, that's all 3. I'm getting really bright now. But sometimes, there you go. Sometimes you can have 2 different colored gels and you end up with several different shadows. See all the shadows I got? And when you look on the curtain, you can see, well, there's a bluish shadow and there's an orangish shadow. And then a lot of shadow in between. But the 2 combinations, the 2 different colors, end up with more of a mix towards the center. So that is our different lighting styles. Any questions? Oh, okay, Ray, if you want to just go back to the regular lighting, that would be grand. There we go. Okay. TCTV teaches a number of classes, and one is called the Studio Package. Okay, there, he turned on one. That would be for 5-point lighting. It kind of covers everything all at once. We do a number of classes. We do single classes that cover the studio only. Sometimes there are members that they don't want to make a show. They all they want to do is help a friend member out. And so they'll take the studio class, and once you take the studio class, we show you how the lights work and how the audio system works in here. We show you how the cameras work. We have all kinds of backdrops that any members can use for their productions, or they can bring their own, but we have a whole bunch. We show you those. We show you a whole bunch of stuff, and then we let you practice with the camera and this sort of thing. And that way, you become certified to be able to use the camera anytime. Generally, the way it works, we have all kinds of gear. We have field gear and the studio elements. And once you take the class and you learn how to use the stuff, then you can book the space and use it anytime, as long as we have that equipment. We've had our field cameras, the AX2000s, for a number of years, and people have taken the class a number of years ago, and they're still certified. So it really helps to do that if you know someone that has a production, or what is often the case here at TCTV, or TC Media now, actually, there's a lot of members that don't have a large crew, or they have an idea, they want to do a show, but they don't have a lot of help. here we have a lot of volunteers. I'm the volunteer coordinator, and I know 50 people that are certified to use a studio. And when people want to do a production, they will ask for my help from time to time, and I will call them up and say, hey, so-and-so is doing a show about lighting. And they'll say, okay, sure, I'm interested. And then you can get help making a show. So we'll do an individual class just for the studio. We'll do an individual class just for the control room. Or we'll do a package where one day it's here in the studio, the next day it's in the control room, the third day you practice using all of the things and everyone takes turns and we do a round robin, you practice, and then the fourth day we do an actual production. And then you're certified for everything in the control room and everything here, and you can do all kinds of things. Does anyone have any questions about lighting? I didn't really go into physics very much, except a little bit about the spectrum and such, but I was wondering, does anyone have any questions? Microphone. I'm going to grab the microphone. Probably need to turn it on. I turned it on.
If you say so. The question is,
oh, hold on. Can you hear him? Freddie, can you hear him? Yeah? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, there we are. I want to do a show. It's actually a one-person, one-act, but I want her up and pacing on the set. This is probably an area maybe 6 feet by 12 feet.
Okay.
And it needs to be lit so she can wander around in there and not turn green and blue and bright brilliant yellow and things like that. Can you figure out how to light using what you just told us to cover an area that big?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Essentially, the big round lights, the scoops, and Ray, if you want to turn on one of the scoops, I'm not sure what they're plugged into, but behind this curtain, we have a green screen. And it goes about where Bob is, right over there by the stool, real close to there, and it goes all the way to the wall. And a green screen needs to be lit evenly across the way. There we go. That's one of the scoops. The scoops, they don't have barn doors on them, so you can't really manage the light. It just spreads all over the place. And so we have several scoops to evenly light the green screen, and that would probably be your best bet because it's got a big sheet of diffusion and it just spreads the light out nice and evenly. So, yeah, does that answer your question? We only have 4 though, so you'd have to spread them out a bit. But there have been times that we've had a performance over here, not necessarily in front of the green screen, but the person would dance all over the place. They'd have this kind of this square area. They'd move all over and they would just get a scoop and shine it straight down, and it would kind of cover a circular area fairly well, and seems to work. One other way would to get Fresnels and just point them at regular intervals down on the floor so that no matter where they went, they would be under the light of one of the Fresnels or the other, or a couple of them. That might be another way. Did I answer your question? Okay, any other questions? Please ask me questions. Go ahead and grab that mic. The on-off switch is on the back. Yeah.
I'm just curious. Is that
Freddie,
the right sound?
is he getting sound? Yeah?
Okay.
Good. Okay, go ahead.
Are the traffic lights Fresnels?
I believe that they used to be, but now they're using LEDs. And LEDs just shine straight through. Yeah, they were a form of Fresnels. Fresnels don't necessarily have to be concentric rings. The next time you go to your car, take a look at the headlights and you'll notice a ripple pattern. And you'll notice that there will be kind of areas where the glass is a little thicker and ridged a little bit different. And the idea is your car wants to shine downwards and not out. It wants to send the light out. And so there are all kinds of varieties of Fresnel lenses that are used for all kinds of different things. And when I was preparing for the class, I wanted to look for a picture of Fresnel lenses, and I found all kinds of different things. Essentially, anytime you want to take light that comes from a point source and send it in one direction evenly, all of them, Fresnel lenses are used. And I was trying to think of what other applications. I think some flashlights will use them. But now that we have LEDs, essentially the way an LED works is that you've got a little plate and a little plate, and they are parallel with each other. An electron jumps from one plate to another, and on this plate are phosphors, and when an electron hits it, a photon goes absolutely in the same direction, perpendicular to the surface of this little layer, and so the light goes straight. There are little laser pointers. They don't necessarily use lenses. It's a fairly flat, a really flat little tiny little plate, and an electron hits it from a straight line, and it all flows out in a single part of the spectrum, usually red, that sort of thing. So yeah, and if you can get close enough to a traffic light, you'll notice that there are 150 to 200 little LEDs that shine evenly in one color. When we were not using LEDs, sometimes the amber was a little bit different, or the greens were a little bit different, not quite the same part of the spectrum. But now with the LEDs, they can make it exactly the same colors. Yes?
You talked about lighting from overhead. Any uses for lighting from desk level or below?
Oh yeah. Does the name Boris Karloff come to mind? So lighting can be really interesting. It's not done much here in the studio because all the lights are attached to the grid, and it's difficult to find an object to attach a Fresnel to on a light stand to get the light coming from below. That's where we would get the field lights and bring them into the studio so that we get light shining up above. One of the bigger complaints that people have in the studio is that the lights are at about 45 degrees. And so I will get this shadow under my neck. And some people just don't like that shadow very much. And so they will have a field light brought in. And so it makes less of a shadow of their under their chin. But uses, yeah, definitely avant-garde and edgy. If you're all about the avant-garde and edgy, definitely bring in a field light kit and shine just right up your nose. Yeah. Yes.
The other place
You need a mic.
The other place I've seen those used is for dance acts, particularly something like tap dancing or
Yep.
classical ballet. And they'll put them on usually a lower stand than the table is.
Yeah.
And the crew hates them because you keep walking into them. They're widely known as shin kickers.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not used very, oh, you can leave the mic on, I imagine. They're not used very often. Occasionally, there will be a production where the person is reading from the teleprompter. Two of our cameras here in the studio are teleprompters, so I could literally read the news. They're reading from the teleprompter and they're not moving, they're not doing much, there isn't an audience and there isn't a guest, they're just facing the camera. So a lot of times they'll bring in the field lighting and it will soften the light and evenly spread it around and reduce shadows. What I've learned is the older I get, the more shadows in my face there are. So it's more likely that I'm going to use a really diffuse light up a little bit closer and soften my features a little more. Nope.
What would you recommend as lighting for live shows with, let's say, a group of 10, 20 people or so?
There's a show called Dance Solely Dance every Friday. The producer, Freddie, has like 3 shows back to back. And part of it is a talk show. Another part of it is a live band that performs. And the third part is Dance Solely Dance, and there will be as many as 20 people here in the studio dancing around. And generally, every single Fresnel that we got is used. Some of them have gels in them, some of them have diffusion. The idea is that we want to make it as interesting as possible, or he does when he does it, and he will light up all the things. And so when a dancer moves over here, they look a little red, and when they move over there, they look a little green. And so that would be it. But generally, if it's a performance piece by a group of people, I don't know, doing a Broadway dancing something or another. Usually, well, actually, Karaoke-Oli. There's a karaoke show that happens every third Friday. And there's the DJ hosts over here, and there's the area in front of the green screen where they sing, and these people move around. And so the way that works is that there will be 2 or 3 key lights over here and 2 or 3 fill lights over there. And the idea is that it won't matter if they're over here a little more or over there a little more, they're still evenly lit. And so I think the plan is to have several key lights kind of from this direction and several fill lights from that direction, so they can be anywhere in a 10-15 foot range and still be well lit up. And there will be several backlights so that they're all covered, so that when they're singing, whether they're up close to the camera or whether they're standing closer to the background, they're still just as lit. So, did that answer your question? Okay.
Got 2 questions for you. Number 1, you said something about a safety chain. So is that required on all the lights?
Essentially, a little bit of physics for you. When something falls, it doubles its speed. It may not double its speed. It picks up speed every foot that it falls. So it falls faster and faster and faster and faster. These things weigh about 20 pounds, and if one of these were to fall on you, it would be equivalent to a sledgehammer. It would kill you. It'd absolutely kill you. If those barn doors fall, they have a knife-like surface, and so it wouldn't kill you, but it would really hurt bad. So the safety chains are an absolute must. And every once in a while, sometimes once a week, sometimes it just depends on the number of productions, I'll take the big ladder and I'll climb up there and I'll look around and make sure that there are safety chains on them. If someone forgets to put a safety chain on it, I'll try and figure out who set up the last production so I can go and yell at them. Or holler or shout or something like that, because no one has ever been hurt. We've never had a Fresnel drop on anyone. We've had a few barn doors drop, but we've never had an accident like that. And while I'm here, I'll do everything to make sure it never does, because that would just be awful. So.
And for my second question, I noticed up there on the grid, we're seeing some yellow striping and some green striping. Is that significant for setting up lights? Oh, I see. Okay. So on the grid, we have, well, up above here, we have yellow over here, and kind of like we've got yellow over here. Originally, years ago, when the station was very, very new, the plan was to place a Fresnel anywhere on that part of the grid with the yellow tape, so that people who are not as familiar or experienced with lighting, they would just know that there was a light in this area, and if they put the light somewhere on one of these and pointed them at the subject, they would get very, very close to a really nice distance from each other, a nice angle between the key light and the fill light.
usually the things that happen here in the studio are right in the middle, right in the center, a little bit back from center. And if you put a light over on the yellow taped part of the grid over there, and you put one over there, you're good to go. And we don't have any colored tape necessarily in the middle, you just want it shining right more or less overhead. So the yellow tape is primarily as standard placements for Fresnels, so that if they're in that area, they could get good coverage. We have green tape over here. Excuse me. We have green tape over here, and that is for the green screen. And the green screen, it's covered with a curtain right now, so we'll just leave that alone. But the idea is that you can put the scoops, we have 4 of them, you can stick all 4 of them on there. You put the scoops on where that green tape is, and just point them at the green wall, and you've got good coverage. At some point we're going to put orange, probably over here, with the expectation that people do talk shows, and they do it just a little bit back from center, and you put your Fresnels anywhere on the orange tape line, and you've got good 45-degree angles from each other, and your show will look good. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm getting close to running out of time. Are there any other questions? No? Okay. Well, this show is being recorded, and it'll be edited, and within about a week or so, it will be on our channel. TCTV or TC Media Channel 22. It will air Sunday at 3 p.m., Tuesday at 8 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 7:30 p.m. I want to thank everyone for tuning into the show and listening to me droll on. My name is Dan Bennett. This is the Second Saturday Training Show, and thank you for watching, and we will see you again next time.
It's the TCTV Training Show. The TCTV Training Show. We'll teach you how to shoot. We'll teach you how to light. Teach you how to mic and edit right. Each second Saturday there's a free training, from programs on display to focusing and framing. It's the TCTV Training Show. The TCTV Training Show. You're watching TCTV. It's the Training Show. The TCTV Training Show. Second Saturdays at 12 o'clock in Studio A.